I grew up in Houston, Texas, and although I spent some time in Tulsa, Oklahoma before I went to Houston, and really was introduced to music in Tulsa because my dad played records in the house all the time, jazz records, and he would take me out to church on Sunday, but we went to black churches. And my father, you know, he said, if we're gonna praise, we're gonna do it right. And so that's where I really got hooked, was those ladies with the tambourines and stuff. Man, oh man, you know. And just the overall joy and spirit of the place. And I heard that in New Orleans music, and which is what my dad played a lot of at the house. And that was, you do what you like. Yeah. And that was the taproot right there to everything. Well, one day my dad, when we had moved to Houston, came home from his job with a pair of sticks and a wood block. And he played for fun. He played ragtime piano. He didn't improvise, but he had a big collection of Scott Joplin and people like that, and he would play for relaxation in the evening. Instead of turning on the TV, he'd play ragtime. And he decided he wanted me to play with him. So I never asked him what made him buy that wood block and those sticks, but he set me on the floor and put the wood block on the floor and put the sticks in my hand, and off we go. And of course, I was, at that time, my main man on the drums was Baby Dodds, because I was listening to New Orleans stuff, so I try to copy Baby Dodds' wood block licks. And then after that, he bought me a beginner snare drum with the thumb screws on the bottom to tighten the head, and calf heads too. And so I started, traded the wood block for the snare drum. I actually have some pictures at home, and that's how the playing started. And so I'd set my kit up and just play along and try to copy what I heard my mentors at that time, which is sort of into Gene Krupa. Buddy Rich scared the devil out of me, but Gene Krupa really swung great. Morello. I didn't get into people like Blakey and Elvin or Roy Haynes or Philly Joe until probably 3 or 4 years later. Oh, wow. Yeah. Bag's Groove. Kenny Clark, Percy Heath, Monk on some of it, Horace Silver, Sonny Rollins. Yeah. And yeah, beautiful, beautiful album. Just no extraneous stuff. The music is pure as it can be. Yeah. And so yeah, that was a favorite. Then there was an album called Krupa and Rich. And I love the Gene Krupa tracks on there. I play with that. A friend of my dad's came home in with an old tape recorder, and I went home and listened to it, and I was mortified. I sounded so bad because I didn't sound like any of the cats that I listened to. So I realized I was playing the drums, but I wasn't playing the music, because the cats on the recordings were playing the music. That's why they didn't play the same stuff over and over. And I was Mr. Offbeat in the left hand all the time. A constant chatter. Just awful. So yeah, that was the beginning right there, really. That 3 o'clock lab band blew the 1 o'clock lab band away because we swung so hard. So Mr. Breeden took the whole rhythm section and to put us in the 1 o'clock second semester. So Mr. Breeden wanted that young blood on top of the beat, look out, here we come feel that this younger rhythm section had. But man, we took no prisoners. I mean,
assuming that you're reading
Yeah, because of all of my symphonic training. Because the first time I saw a big band part, I said, "You got to be kidding!" Because it was a classic, what they used to call stock part, where snare line had quarter notes and the bass drum line had quarter notes, and it says swing. And of course, I said, "If I play this, I'll be fired." So yeah, I said, "Man, because at home I'd listen to Sonny Payne and people like that, and when I was in high school, and when I saw that first drum part, I knew there was more to it than reading." This man had standards higher than the cat's back. I mean, and he brooked no BS. If you weren't prepared for your lesson, it wasn't any of that, "Oh, that's okay, we'll do better next week." It was, get the you-know-what out of here and go practice. You're supposedly preparing for a career? I mean, this guy was serious business. I joined the Glenn Miller Band in my sophomore year. And was fired 2 weeks into the gig. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and here's the great 1 o'clock drummer. You could do no wrong at North Texas. He goes out on the road and plays with a professional band, gets fired. So it was a great learning experience. Yeah, and then the next summer, I was with Kenton's band. We had a 6-week tour. And Stan knew me from North Texas because he was a great supporter of the program. And I got on that, and it was funny because when the band went to New York, we checked in at the President Hotel, and walked in, and there was Ray McKinley in the lobby there because the Miller Band was staying there. And I walked over and I said, "Hey man, how you doing?" He goes, "Eddie, what are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I'm playing with Kenton's band now." And he just looked at me and smiled and said, "I told you so." Going back to school. So Cannonball said, "Oh, you need to check out this young guy at North Texas." So I got the call and got the gig. So when I knew I had the gig, I screwed up my courage and I went up to him and said, "Woody, I ask you a question?" He said, "Sure, what?" I said, why didn't you let me get any of the music up?" And he said, "Well, I knew you from North Texas. And if you were from North Texas, I knew that you could read fly blank. So I wanted to see if you could use your ears." So that's how I got the gig, because I could listen.
There's the lesson.
The boy, was it a big lesson.
Wow.
Big lesson. Yeah. And that's why when I was here at the school teaching, I would try to impress on these kids, it's not how well you read. And you can read a chart perfectly. But a guy who comes in who makes mistakes but plays with dynamics and swings and plays with the rest of the rhythm section, he'll get the gig. Because you can always fix the reading, but you can't always fix the musicality.
Right.
So, yeah.
Wow. So how long were you with Woody?
Off and on for 4 years. Pretty steadily for 2 years, and then I left, and he would call me to come out and fill in till they could find another drummer. He had a hell of a time finding drummers for that band, because you did everything from like Richard Evans' funk charts to Chick Corea type tunes to the traditional swing stuff, and he really had trouble finding drummers who could cover all those different styles. Yeah. Oh, it was great. I mean, I got to work with some people that I never would have been able to work with. One day, Duke Jordan showed up on piano. Another time, Bobby Timmons played piano.
Wow.
Yeah. Ernie Wilkins. Oh, man. Yeah, some great players. Phil Woods, Jimmy Heath. Yeah, it was you never knew until, the group eventually got a pretty much a regular personnel. Hilton Ruiz, pianist. Yeah. Victor Sproles on bass, who worked with Blakey. It was a great gig.
Just a quartet?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I also worked with his big band, and we did a lot of tours. We did a tour with a small group overseas, and Joe Williams came with us, the singer. That was a blast. Yeah, that was some wonderful opportunities. And Clark was a great person to work for, and I got to meet so many people through him. Dizzy became a good friend. Dizzy would show up at gigs, and Max. Yeah, it was fun. I was very fortunate because the mentorship that I had when I was a high schooler in Houston continued when I got to New York. He had an ascot and an all-white suit. Really stunning. Stunning. And rings, I mean the whole thing. That was. And so, of course, he and Clark were old friends. Clark had recorded with him. So on the break, they were talking. I moseyed over and introduced myself, and I said it'd be a real honor if you'd sit in on my drums. And he said, well, thank you. He was very well spoken. Well, thank you very much, Ed. I appreciate I'll take you up on that. So, yeah, so he came. Amazing how the character of the group changed. Oh, man, the authority this man had in his playing. I mean, either you went with him or you were done. His time, and I don't say it was obnoxious. Yeah. I mean, it was just so, his body language and everything, it was. And like I told you, I was sitting in the peanut gallery over there, maybe 8 feet from him, and watching that left hand. I mean, what can you say? Tony Williams was a very big influence on my generation. Credible, as was Roy Haynes, because of Now He Sings, Now He Sobs, that Chick Corea album. That came out, and man, whew, look out. So it was Tony, the three cats when I was in school. It was Tony, Roy, and Elvin. And we had exponents of that type of playing in school. A cat named Stan Gage, who was a wonderful drummer, was totally Elvinized. I was caught between Tony and Roy, and stole from both liberally. But also, I still had in me Baby Dodds and Zooty Singleton and Sid Catlett, Mercy Sakes Alive. He was the first one where I realized that the importance of stylistic diversity. Elvin may not want to play shang, gang, gadang. He might want to play ding, ding, gading. And he can. Tony's, saying ding, ding, da-ding on So Many Miles recordings, but then you get to Nefertiti and it's ding, 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 ding. Beautiful open triplet. Alan Dawson was another one. This man could fit in any situation. You listen to him play with Booker Ervin, that crazy music he did with him, then turn around and play with Arnett Cobb. So that was the big eye-opener for me. It still is. That you cannot categorize these people any more than you categorize a great painter and say he always uses red the same way, These cats they let the music tell them what to play. And so that's how I'm influenced now. But I definitely have roots in Mr. Williams and Mr. Haynes. I play along with CDs a lot and with different bass players. And that's what I'm working on, is seeing how different time feels work with different bass players. Just because that's my main concern usually in a band. If it's some people I haven't played with before, is obviously my first hookup is with the bass player. Yeah. So I want to learn how to play with bass players who have a tendency, often, not always, but often, like Ray Brown, to play on top of the beat. Yeah. Sam Jones, the same thing. What does it feel like to hook up with Sam Jones? Feels really good. Yeah. All right, or a bassist like Jimmy Garrison. I mean, I'm basically studying time. That's all I'm doing, studying different ways of playing time. And I'm working on it in funk formats, too. And the only coordination stuff that I do is basically go back to really basic stuff and figure out new ways to play it. Yeah. For me, it's already been played that way by somebody else. I just haven't heard them yet. And copying drummer styles, different ride pattern styles, and all sorts of things like that. And then I have my own stuff, and my own stuff basically is built around soloing. How to interpret tunes on the drum set. Because to me, I mean, it's pretty hard. You're pretty hard pressed to find a way to play time today that somebody else already hasn't put their stamp on. Yeah. But when it comes to soloing, that's where a drummer's individuality really, I think, comes out. Because that's when they can say what they want to say by themselves without any limits, you know, of the group or the rhythm section. So, you know, finding tunes and finding drummers, different versions of it where drummers have soloed on it is really fascinating to me. So if I practice anything for me, it's just I'll sit and solo. Because that way I find out things I can't play. And if I can't play it in a soloistic format, well, what if I put it in a timekeeping format? Can I do it that way? And I probably can't. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's what I'm doing now.
You have so many drummers who have studied with you, who have gone on to do incredible things.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the most well-known names out there are drummers who studied with you. How does that make you feel to know that you had a big influence and that gave them such a strong foundation to succeed?
That means it makes me feel good because all I'm doing is passing on what was given to me. And of course the greatest compliment of all, as I've probably said before, is none of them play like me. You know, and I think there are teachers who expect their students to play the way they do and teach like that. And that's fine, to each his own. But my job is to unlock the word that I just used a minute ago, imagination. And because that's where the individuality comes from. And all those guys and gals who have made their mark one way or another on the drum set all have one thing in common. They all know how to solve their own problems, and they all know how to use their ears. And to me, that was my other big point, was to give them the brain power or ability to, if they're in a session and somebody says, do this, bingo, they got it. You know? Or if they're playing in a band and things don't feel right, let me try putting the backbeat a little back here. Bingo. So they all got the same tools, but they all use them differently in the service of the music. So what more can you ask for? It's an honor that you're carrying on the program and bringing your own expertise and experience to it. That's so important, because you just didn't learn in the academy. You learned on the street too, and that's, to me, is vital to have that balance. Well, to all you young drummers out there, if you're smart, you'll come to University of North Texas and study with Quincy. You hear me? Okay.
I didn't pay him to say that.
No, he didn't, but he's going to give me the symbol.
All right, we'll work that out.
Okay.
Ed, thank you so much.
All right, man. Thank you.